Hey everybody, Jake here, TrendSpider, to go over the weekend update into August 30th, starting with some broad market ETFs to get an idea of what's going on across the overall markets, and then jumping into some individual names. Starting with SPY, you can see here that we did break out of this August 16th high last week and retested it, and then had a huge move up on Friday, thinking that, the next area to watch would be this trend line above, let's say around 455 all the way to around 457, depending on how long that takes. Now, on the weekly side of things, you can see here that we have this huge ascending wedge, and you can see here that we still have room to the upside. If we did start to move really strong to the upside next week, possibly testing that, let's say 457, 460 area above. And so it's interesting to see we do have confluence on the weekly and daily chart right around that 458, 460 area. So that would be the target above. A lot of people look at the ascending wedge and think it's bearish. I personally have definitely seen more resolve to the upside than the downside. So don't try to be a hero shorting this market if the trend is definitely still up for now. Now, going into the Qs, you can see here that we also have a very strong move to the upside over the last few weeks. And you can see here that this is just a great example of using the 1.618 extension. You can see here that we do have this this ascending triangle that we broke out of. You can see this is the measured move shown by these two blue circles. And you can see where we closed on Friday, right at this 1.618 extension. And the reason why I'm using extensions is because if you look to the left, there is no price action. We have nothing to look at and say, okay, this was the previous high above. There are no previous highs above as we hit all-time highs. So you have to use this 1.618 extension, and we'll just see, how that holds up into the week ahead. Now, on the weekly side of things, you'll see here that this 1.618 extension from the COVID measured move here has been a really strong level of support and resistance over the last 6 or 7 weeks. Now, you can see that we finally did resolve to the upside. We broke these previous highs, and over the longer term, this 2.618 extension above is right around 404 to 405. So not saying that gets hit anytime soon, but if you are looking at the longer term levels, that 2.618 extension would be an area to definitely watch. Now, going into IWM, one that's been lagging for quite some time, finally is looking like we could get a pretty big move here. And it's been quite the false signals here, if you want to call it that, over the last few months. It's looked like we're going to break out, then we don't. Now, the main thing that I'm watching here is, one, on the weekly chart, we do have a close right above that volume shelf, so I did highlight this green for that reason, because we do have pretty much the price above this main level now that was acting as supply over the last 4 or 5 weeks. Now, the main area that you want to watch for is this previous area above, so that would be right around 234, 235. If we break above that, that's when things could really start kicking into gear. You've got breakout traders coming in, you've got people starting to cover their short positions, and that could really bring a very strong move in the small cap world. Now, maybe it's not small cap summer, maybe it's small cap fall, we'll have to see. But on the monthly chart, if we look further out, and always if you're in doubt, zoom out, you can see here that all we're doing over the last couple months is simply retesting this trend line that we broke out of. And this goes all the way back to the early 2000s. So the fact that we broke out of this area, it's very natural to pull back and retest this area, which is previous resistance now acting as support. And all in all, that monthly candle does look good. And we are going into the last couple days of August, so it's definitely important to keep an eye on that monthly candle now. Now, going into some individual names, I'm going to go over one that I really like right now, Disney. This is one that I do have a position in, so full disclosure. But I want to go over the thesis on why I'm in the position, why I like it. One, we really have done nothing over the last several months. We've been consolidating here. You can see this rounded bottom forming on Disney. Had some pretty good news come out. Friday does have a nice big bullish engulfing candle as well as an outside bar. And so that is something to definitely keep in mind going into the week ahead. Now, on the weekly side of things, you can see here that if we go to the, I'm on the monthly here. If we go to the weekly side of things, what I did was I just took the MACD, keeping it very simple on here, and looking the last time we had a MACD look like this, where the MACD is curling for some time. This was back during the COVID move to the downside. You can see here, when I'm talking about the MACD curling, I'm not talking about the actual cross yet. I'm talking about the blue starting to get very close to crossing the yellow, which is the signal. And you can see here that we're really setting up exactly like that now. You can see here if we anchored the volume by price from this swing low, we've got this absolutely massive volume shelf here. And what I've done to get an idea of maybe what this next move looks like is I took the measured move from this MACD curl back in 2020 and just applied that same move to this current setup here. And so if we went up the same amount over the next 4 weeks, that would be about 17%, which would put us around 210 to 212. So we've got the MACD set up. We've got this massive volume shelf. The longer that we base and consolidate, the bigger the move to the upside. And the news last week with the sports gambling and ESPN definitely could be that catalyst. So all in all, rounded bottom on the daily. The weekly, you've got the MACD curling. You've got a really strong volume shelf here. And I'm thinking this could have a very big move, especially as it lags the S&P 500, the Qs. This is something that is hedged either way. If COVID comes in, they've got Disney Plus, they've got movies. If COVID starts to kind of go away again, the parks. So this is one that it kind of shocks me that we're not at all-time highs, and we'll have to see if this does resolve more to the upside next week. Going into GRWG, this is another one that I have an active position in. Just want to go over the thesis here. So one, if you look at the daily chart here, if we anchor the volume by price from the swing high, you'll see here that we do have a pretty, weekly report popping up. We do have a pretty strong volume shelf forming here. You can see that we've got this kind of mini cup and handle forming. And, we do have this huge price gap above as well. Now, on the weekly side of things, we have this massive bull flag forming, a nice bounce off the COVID low anchored VWAP over the last couple weeks. And you can see here that the trend line is right in conjunction with that COVID low. Now, you can see here that the MACD has done nothing but go straight down since pretty much April after crossing to the downside. And, MACDs only can go so far. The trend, especially the fact that we only really drew down to the COVID low anchored VWAP, and you can see the MACD just looks like it's gotten absolutely destroyed. So one thing I'll be looking for is definitely the MACD starting to curl to the upside for possibly that longer term confirmation of a reversal. But for now, we're holding right at that weekly bull flag support and that COVID low anchored VWAP on the weekly side of things. Now, going into the next one, AMD, this is one that just looks absolutely amazing. The rest of the positions that will go, or tickers will go over, I don't have active trades. Maybe a couple of them I have longer term positions in, but AMD is one I'm not currently trading. It's one that I definitely have on the watch list, and just an absolute beautiful pennant breakout here. You can see here that we did hold this point of control last week. A lot of people were thinking, well, where's the move? Well, the move came on Friday. We broke these previous highs around 109.75, and this thing is looking like we could have a very strong move to the upside. If we anchor a VWAP from this swing high, you'll see that we finally closed above that anchored VWAP, and things look very strong going into the week ahead. If you look at the weekly chart, if you guys remember this original chart that I made several weeks ago, we did have this huge ascending triangle forming. We broke out. We didn't actually retest it because that would have been a pretty big drawdown from the highs, but we did get relatively close. And you can see this is just setting up really beautifully for the next leg up on the weekly candle as well. So for me, the target initially would just be this previous high around 122. And we'll see if that hits into the coming weeks. Next one is Spotify. This is one that I do have a longer term position in, not actively trading it, but I do, love this company. Just the fact that one, the market cap is very low to the total addressable market here. And then on the weekly side of things, you'll see here that we do have this kind of falling wedge forming, and the main thing to watch for would be this breakout of this falling wedge. The anchored VWAP from the all-time highs has been an area of resistance above. So if we do continue to move up and break out, that area above would be, let's say, right around 255 to around 265. You can see here that I have an anchored VWAP percentage offset. So that means that I'm essentially, adding some margin of error here. Notice that the price action did close above this original anchored VWAP, the all-time high anchored VWAP, but we did have about a 2% margin of error. Actually, let's see what that was. So this was 4%. So you can see here what I've done is I've added another line 4% above this anchored VWAP to capture some of those moves that were breaking above the anchored VWAP but ultimately failed to the downside. So the main thing I'd be looking for is a break above that 4% offset. We still have quite a ways to go before we even start thinking about that. But on the weekly chart, you can see that we had a pretty strong weekly close and definitely want to look for possibly a falling wedge breakout before we even consider these anchored VWAP levels above. But you can see here shown by the red circles, they definitely have been levels of interest where sellers come in the past. Now going into PLTR, this is one that I wasn't originally going to do, but I figured a lot of people like this stock, a lot of people are watching it, we might as well go over it. So PLTR, you can see here that we have continuation up after that huge earnings gap to the upside. And the main area that I'm watching above would be this gap above that has not fully filled from around the 2620 area above. If we break above that, the next area would be this 2750 area above. But then on the weekly chart, we just have this absolutely massive ascending triangle forming. If we anchor a VWAP from the all-time highs here, you'll see that we really actually closed above it. However, we also did that back in June, and we did get rejected at this previous high. So the main thing here that we want to see is really a close above, really, let's say the 29 area. You can see here that we do have, if we turn on the gap snake, I'm not sure if we'll be able to capture it. I guess not, it's too small of a gap, but you can see here, right here, that this gap above, let's say, I think it's right around 3130 or something, that would be the target above if we did fill this initial really small gap around 2620. So all in all, this is looking pretty strong. If we do look at the raindrop real quick, looking at Friday's wick, you'll see here that there's a lot of volume within this wick as well. So this is very bullish in my opinion. My opinion doesn't really matter. It's what the market cares about. But look at this. We broke out of this previous resistance. We've got volume above that resistance point. I'm going to call this a balloon breakout. So all in all, this is exactly what I'm looking for continuation to the upside going into the week ahead. So possibly a very strong week coming for PLTR. Next one on the list is Etsy. This is one that has been requested quite a few times, so I did want to go over it. And a pretty interesting case study here on Etsy. If we anchor the VWAP from the all-time highs, you'll see here that the price action did not really respect the anchored VWAP that well. So you can see here that we've got this blue line, that's your original all-time high anchored VWAP. And then I have another 9.5% offset where you can see that the price did get to that area a couple times over the last several months. And the fact that we finally closed above it is worth noting. However, we did do that a little bit back in July. So we'll have to see if this is kind of exactly something mimicking the July move. However, you have to always zoom out, look at the bigger time frames as well. You can see here on the weekly chart, we are breaking out of this symmetrical triangle here. So that is something to definitely keep in mind and something that I'm really focusing on the longer term side of things. A lot of the time, the daily, even the weekly can sometimes be noise, but in this case, the weekly chart is clearly showing that we could have a bigger move to the upside coming. So if that happened, all you need to do is just look at these previous highs, look left, what a lot of people like to say. That means just look at these previous levels that were resistance. If that's the case, 229 to 230 would be your area above that you'd want to watch on Etsy if we do continue higher. You're just using previous points on the chart to get an idea of where we could go next. That doesn't mean that's where it's going to stop. That's just got to be your initial target, and then you reevaluate if that target is hit. So going into Apple, we have a pretty interesting setup here. We do have an ascending triangle here forming on the daily chart. So you'll see here that we've got the raindrop, you've got some volume at the top of the range, and the main thing that we'd want to watch for is this previous high around, let's say, 152. So we need to break 152 to really get this going. And it's interesting to see because we had a pretty similar setup on the Qs, and we did just absolutely rip to the upside. So if we did that on Apple, and we anchor volume by price on the weekly chart from the March lows here, you'll see that we do have a pretty strong volume shelf forming. We did close above it again. That's why I highlighted this green. And you can see here, this is the measured move that I created. So the 1.618 extension is right around this 155 area above. So 155 would be your initial target. And remember, we can't look left because there is nothing to the left. So this is when you want to use those 1.618 extensions to get a better idea of where we could possibly go. A lot of people use Fibonacci extensions. That's why it is an important area to watch. Kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy almost. So in this case, 155 if we do continue to the upside. And the main area, to watch the downside would just be this previous low from the week before last, around 144.50. So keep that area below in mind if we do actually start breaking down. But this is a pretty big volume shelf here that the price is holding at right now. Next one, we'll go over to a couple small cap names, or Wish isn't really a small cap name, but it is a little bit of a smaller market cap compared to some of the other ones we've gone over. And this is one that is finally looking really solid here. So this is one that, looked like it was going to continue to break down. Based on the weekly chart, I thought this was possibly going to the $4 level. Does that mean I'd go short it to $4? Absolutely not. But what I was doing was I was simply looking at this longer term downward sloping trend line, and you can see that my thesis was simply by looking at this area below. Now, you do kind of have a secondary pattern here that's forming this falling wedge, and you can see that we are holding support for now. If we did continue to the upside, this initial area on the weekly at least would be this resistance trend line above. But if you go to the daily chart, you'll see here if we anchor the volume by price from the swing high and we turn on the RSI, we turn on the MACD, and we turn on the, what else did I have? The percent range, you'll see that we have a very similar setup to what we had in the past. So if we kind of optimize this chart a little bit, you'll see that we've got the lower lows here, but you can see here on the Williams percent range, we actually had higher lows. So this is actually kind of mathematical divergence. And I mean mathematical divergence because you can't even really see that this is divergence if you're just looking at it with a naked eye. So what I do is I just put my mouse over this previous low. I can see negative 98.99. And then if I put it over this most recent low, it's at negative 98.11. So technically this is a higher low. You just can't see it visually like you could see it back over the last 2 times this happened. So all in all, you've got the percent range breaking to the upside. You don't even have the RSI starting to move yet. You'll see the last few times that we had this type of setup with the RSI and the percent range, that was at least a signal for a short-term move to the upside, and we'll have to see if this is kind of the same thing. The main thing that I'll point out here on the MACD is we're also about to cross on the MACD. You can see that we have this huge volume price gap above. So using the anchored volume by price, we have the volume gap, but you can also see here that we have the price gap above from the earnings gap down, and that would put us right around, let's say, 940. And then you've got pretty heavy supply above from around 955 all the way up to around 1050. So all in all, Wish is looking relatively strong. This is definitely still in a downtrend, so it does have a lot to prove itself still. But keep this in mind that we are kind of getting back into those meme stock type of moves, and this could be one, as a lot of people do watch this stock. The next one that's already made the move is BBIG. This is a smaller market cap, I think, based on the after hours move on Friday. I mean, this is probably over a $500 million market cap now. But you can see here on the daily chart, we broke out of the symmetrical triangle. Really strong move to the upside. I think after hours we hit like mid 7s. So we're kind of way up here, at least after hours on Friday. So my targets above would simply just be this previous high around 945. And then if we were looking at the longer term setup, I would be looking at one, as I mentioned, the previous high would be your initial target, 947 or 945 to 947. But then you also have another previous high back from 2018. So if we hit that high, that's around 1163. And what I've done here is I've just taken the measured move from that high all the way down to the January 21 low. And you'll see here that, 1163 to 11, let's say 1160 to 1175, even maybe 12 would be your target above. If we broke through that, then your 1.618 extension would be around $18. And remember, there are no previous highs above this one from 2018. So that's when we want to bring in the 1.618 extension. So we went over a ton of charts. Hopefully this was helpful. Wanted to really go over a diverse group of stocks, not just large caps, not just small caps. Wanted to go over the broad markets to show you guys where we're at in the current market environment. So hopefully this video is helpful in understanding some of that. Remember, if you do enjoy these videos, please like and subscribe. We'll do these a lot more often. And everybody, thank you for your time to watch this, and hopefully everybody has a great trading week ahead.